Good. Welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist virtual worship service, where we gather each week beyond our four walls to be together in these unique times. I am Jim O'Neill, CCUU member, and today worship associate. Today, the Reverend Jacqueline Luck will be offering the sermon, "Be Cautious of Your Goodness." The Reverend Jacqueline Luck is a retired minister, now a minister emerita from Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church in Johnson City, Tennessee. She is now a member of the Community Church. She is also a graduate of the shared pulpit course in sermon writing offered earlier this year by our minister, Reverend Darcy Rourke. Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. All who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning are welcome. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically in recognition of the inherent worth and dignity of all. We believe it is not necessary to think alike in order to love alike. We are very glad to have you join us in this service of worth giving.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
It is Community Church's custom to light a chalice, invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please join me in reading the words in the chat box together, written by a good friend of the church, Mr. Bert Brunson. We light this flame to affirm the light of truth and knowledge, the warmth of love and community, and the hope of commitment. We will now hear the words for all ages presented by Cynthia Ramirez, our Director of Religious Education.
Good morning, everybody. This is called Naked Truth and Parable, and it's by Heather Forrest. Naked Truth walked down the street one day, and people turned their eyes away. Parable arrived, draped in decoration. People greeted Parable with celebration. Naked Truth sat alone, sad and unattired. "Why are you so miserable?" Parable inquired. Naked Truth replied, "I'm not welcome anymore. No one wants to see me. They chase me from the door." "It is hard to look at Naked Truth," Parable explained. "Let me dress you up a bit. Your welcome will be gained." Parable dressed Naked Truth in story's fine attire, with metaphor, poignant prose, and plots to inspire. With laughter and tears and adventure to unveil, together they went forth to spin a tale. People opened their doors and served them their best. Naked Truth, dressed in story, was a welcome guest. The end.
Excuse me, Jim. You're muted, and it won't let me unmute you.
Okay, how is that? Can you hear me now? Good. So our first reading is from Burton Carley. This is the thing. The same virtue may become a sin. If you ponder the 7 deadly sins, they all represent love gone wrong. Something wonderful becomes something harmful. Patriotism may become nationalism. Tolerance may become indifference. Commitment may become fanaticism. Confidence may become hubris. Self-esteem may become narcissism. Liberty may become license. Piety may become self-righteousness. I'm reminded of the Garden of Eden story. The temptation to eat the forbidden fruit is projected onto the serpent. But what does the serpent represent? It is the human capacity to rationalize. Adam and Eve did not self-consciously declare their turning from right relationship. No, they saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise. Then they took the fruit and ate it. Goodness is what lubricates the slippery slope. Idolatry is always like that. It begins with something good, and it is worshipped out of context. The part becomes the whole. What is lost is the sense of proportion. John Milton understood this when he said, "And out of good, still to find means of evil." This suggests that the place to discover the shadow in us begins in recognizing the virtues we are most proud of. We begin with what is not inherently bad and pay attention to the temptation to pervert it. So we come to the paradox that it is our goodness that we must be the most wary of. The very things we're most satisfied with become the means to falling out of right relationship. The things that go wrong don't come dressed as harmful, bad, or evil. They come dressed as good. Humility comes from owning the shadow side of our virtues, and in the end, it is humility that allows our virtues to be virtuous. It is a counterintuitive truth, but important to our spiritual maturity. Be cautious of your goodness.
So before the hymn of the day, I'd just like to introduce the joys and concerns, or joys and sorrows. Now is the time in our service where members are invited to share the joys and sorrows that they have been experiencing. Please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to transmit your joys and sorrows that will be read after the hymn.
My life goes on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What while the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What will the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Do you want me to read them?
The offertory.
No, it's just a moment. It's Alan Malone wrote, "My good friend, ex-student and airplane partner has recently been diagnosed with the virus, and he is symptomatic. I want to, Emma's Garden wrote, I want to thank God for my life, parents, siblings, and friends. From me, I wrote, it's a kind of a gentle reminder. I took Bennett and Carol a meal this week, a joy to speak with him. Perhaps you will sign up to share with them. And the link is right where you found the link for this service in the community matters email. From Liz Trotter, please keep my daughter Cindy and her new husband Nick safe as they travel, and good fortune as they move to Minneapolis in search of jobs and the loving support of family. Again from me, Bill Hawley, the incarcerated man I visited since 2005, is struggling with COVID with no medical care. Howard Milkey, my joy was receiving acceptance on a manuscript that has been in review for over 6 months. Thanks for all who assisted with this research. And as always, we remember and hold in our hearts those who have not spoken, but have great joys and also deep sorrows, and yet choose not to share them right now. And we understand that, and we encourage them to know that they're not alone, and you can reach the caring committee. It's, I think Alicia's going to post that when she puts the music up, maybe, with the announcements. I don't know. She may not be able to. No, she's not. It's caring committee at uuanola.org.
Excuse me, it's just caring.
Caring, okay. Caring at
CCUU.
CCUU.
No. Done.
Okay, Do it. Say it for me.
caring@ccuunola.org.
Okay, thank you. We're having to run without our worship associate doesn't have a screen today or video. And so Jim jumped in for us to help, and I'm jumping in now, and we're all off script. So Jim, you can pick it up now with whatever's next.
Sure. Offering. Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Your generosity enables the congregation to fulfill its mission within and beyond the church walls. You can give online or by text. You can make arrangements with your bank for your gift, or you can mail a check to CCUU 70124. The address hopefully will be displayed on your screen.
Jacqueline, you are on mute.
Okay, how's that?
That's much better.
All right. And secondly, our reading this morning is an email response written to a colleague by an admired contemporary Unitarian Universalist theologian, addressing the question that comes up all the time among us is, what does holding the inherent worth and dignity of all in our congregations? And this is the question she received. Does our insistence on every person's inherent worth and dignity mean that no one here ever fails to live worthily and act with fitting dignity? Does acceptance of one another mean that anything whatsoever is tolerated? Her answer. Phrased so badly, those questions, of course, are absurd. But I think that as a people, we contemporary UUs imply with our silence that our answer to both questions is yes. We seldom address personal moral failure, such as something you and I might be guilty of. We don't describe and lift up our consciously worked out norms like, say, what our spiritual ancestors once called salvation by character. What does character mean among us today? When we think of a prophetic sermon, we almost always have in mind judgment bravely expressed against the policies or actions of big government or big corporations or society, not individuals hearing the sermon at church. Actually, is not judgment a bad word among us when applied to individuals? Isn't it always a terrible thing to judge? She goes on to speak of a well-known former UU minister, John Wolfe, who was in Tulsa. She said, John Wolfe packed them in by the hundreds every Sunday for decades at All Souls Church in Tulsa. John used to baffle young liberal preachers by saying, your job in the pulpit is to dispense grace, and there is no grace without judgment. I never heard him explain that statement, she wrote. It took me a long time to figure it out. I came to believe that he spoke truth and that salutary judgment and grace are infinitely kinder than any niceness. My sermon is Be Cautious of Your Goodness. We Unitarian Universalist people are on the whole a high-minded, often idealistic communion of folk. I will not argue against our striving to be better people. I believe that is crucial to a life well lived and to our faith in action. But we can do ourselves harm if we don't explore what we mean by our oft repeated mantras and perhaps their possible perversions. Today, I'm thinking of the ways our liberal religious ideals can make us vulnerable. What do you mean when you repeat, as we all do so often, that all have inherent worth and dignity? We all know the tyrants of the world. Do they have inherent worth? And it occurs to me, you may not all know what I mean when I say that. I'm citing the first UU principle, which is that we all have inherent worth and dignity. In one of my first theological classes in seminary, I described a grandmother I considered evil. Perhaps I was wrong. She wasn't evil to me, but I knew how she hurt my innocent younger siblings by ignoring them for her own distorted reasons. I caused a kerfuffle among my fellow UU seminarians. I had described another human as evil. I had used the E word. And evil often seems expunged from liberal religious vocabulary. I mean, of course, where's the inherent worth and dignity? I was guilty of not being a good Unitarian Universalist. I was confused and somewhat hurt. I was later told that maybe the others just didn't get it yet. Does our insistence on every person's inherent worth and dignity mean that no one here ever fails to live worthily and act with fitting dignity? I believe that all, by their very being, do have inherent worth. But that doesn't mean we always live up to our potential. We are children of the universe, all God's children, as some say, kinfolk, made of the same flesh and bones. And we struggle as we live our lives, that we have choice about how we will be or how we will respond in this life of ours is a basic premise of our liberal religious tradition. We are not condemned or saved from birth, as some believe. My colleague wrote of the need for salutary judgment and grace to bring health and well-being to our lives. I had to look it up. Salutary judgment is similar to helpful criticism and holds us responsible for our actions, words, and non-actions. And though it may seem difficult or unpleasant, salutary judgment is offered with respect. Salutary judgment offers us the grace of an opportunity to grow, to be people of better character. It is our privilege and responsibility to shape our character, and I believe to help others as we can. Many Unitarian Universalists and others believe in salvation by character, meaning our choosing to be on the, that's my grandchildren running upstairs, on the right side of good, of righteousness. Being a person of integrity saves our lives for ourselves and for our families and for the greater good. With the Star Wars saga, we're given a contemporary image for complex theology when witnessing the surrender of Darth Vader to evil forces and to his destruction, becoming less than fully human. We have complex choices, and life holds us responsible, as it did Vader. We liberal religious people often struggle with healthy boundaries in our relationships and even in our congregations. Because of the ideals we set for ourselves, we may allow ourselves to be treated poorly in the name of tolerance and affirming the inherent worth and dignity of all people. At times, we seem to forget that that also means our congregations and our individuality are also worthy of respect. Obviously, Unitarian Universalist congregations attract very healthy human beings of integrity, as in community churches congregations. It's one of the things I love most about this congregation. Sadly, though, Unitarian Universalist congregations can attract with our welcoming attitudes and our low bar for membership, we can attract those who want to use the congregation for their own purposes. Congregations are not made of saints. We're just ordinary people in all of our diversities. Churches as families have those struggling with various mental illnesses, and we want to support them in every healthy way possible. My colleague, Barbara Meyer, has made her ministerial focus one of educating all of us about how we can do better within our congregations with helping those of us that struggle with mental illness. And she has a new book at the UUA bookstore if you'd like to follow up on it. No matter what, though, we cannot allow or enable abusive behavior from anyone. Harriet was delightful some Sundays and on the attack others. She had been allowed to be so for years within her tiny congregation because all understood and expressed compassion for her. However, soon after a new minister arrived, she shredded a guest speaker. The minister was told it was difficult, but Harriet did that kind of thing fairly often. But what could we do? We're a loving congregation. Harriet and the minister talked, and she divulged she hadn't taken her medicine that day. Did she need help getting her meds? No, she just felt she did better without her medicine. Harriet was respectfully told she was not better without her medicine. In fact, she was abusing the congregation and its guests. The minister would help her get medicine if needed, but she was not to come to church without her medicine. Harsh. A minister telling someone they couldn't come to church. I'm sure some thought so, maybe you do too. However, Harriet complied and seemed not to resent the strong boundaries. Perhaps respectful holding of healthy boundaries in salutary judgment and offering the grace of offering to help with her meds and offering to expressing the desire to have her in the congregation was a help for her, more so than just continued toleration and enabling. I had a member in a congregation I served despise me to the point of vitriolic social media messages, posting Facebook venom and then withdrawing it rapidly. My first thought was, I wasn't worthy of such hate. Surely we could work this out. I arranged for us to talk face to face to no avail several times. I sent notes asking what I could do. I talked with his wife, hoping she'd say she was concerned about his new behavior, but all to no avail. I never found out what he was so upset about. I began to think of him as the man who loved to hate me, but it was no laughing matter. It was both personally and institutionally difficult. He was working to create enough congregational dissension to destroy our ministry. He even had a few newer members collecting signatures for my resignation. I discovered he'd successfully done that same thing, causing the resignation of another minister previously. Maybe their ministry together wasn't working out, but that is not how you negotiate a professional's leave-taking, ever. This was an institutional issue, but I had to affirm to the Board of Trustees each year as it changed members that I didn't have the slightest idea why he hated me to the point of tearing his congregation apart. It didn't make sense. The man who loved to hate me was a very long-term member of the congregation, and the trustees wanted to do the loving thing. They were very reluctant to take any action. For some reason, he obviously was forcing them to choose between him, a member for decades, and their new minister. Members were leaving because of tension within the congregation. In such a case, the Board of Trustees and indirectly the congregation has to act in service to the health and well-being of the congregation. It took 4 years of difficulty before the Board of Trustees could bear to take action. In a registered letter, he was told he was out of covenant with the congregation and must cease and desist before returning. Though I am unaware if this church has one, congregations benefit by having an agreed upon covenant of behavior before one is needed. He did not return, though he continued as a negative force behind the scenes. The congregation held together and is healthier for their leadership's courage in holding him responsible for his destructive actions. They, nor I, ever fell prey to the desire to punish, hate, or seek vengeance. Everyone's inherent worth and dignity was respected. While everyone's inherent worth and dignity was respected while limiting his destructive behavior, and he could have returned if he chose to change his behavior. Salutary judgment and grace were offered. I did not consider him to be evil, though his actions were costly to the congregation's ministry and to me personally. I prayed because I thought he was miserable for some reason, and I prayed especially in order to keep me from being sucked in by hate. Hate is an evil force, as Vader exemplified. Another example of getting tangled up in the desire to respect the inherent worth and dignity of all happened in a congregation with a greatly loved and respected minister. I listened one Sunday, I was in the congregation, as he emotionally apologized for his awful mistake in allowing a sex offender to attend church and keeping it secret because he wanted to offer the man a second chance and a chance to become a UU. The minister met with the man and his parole officer. They drew up a covenant of behavior. He couldn't be with any children at church without another adult present. He wasn't ever allowed in the religious education wing. Yes, it was a large church. They had a whole wing for religious education, Cynthia. The minister decided to only tell the board president in an effort to respect the offender's privacy. I've come to respect transparency much more than keeping confidences. Abusers count on people keeping confidences. I don't know about you, but I was often told, and not by abusers, just as I was being raised, don't hang your dirty laundry on the clothesline for all to see. Keep the secrets, we were taught. That was just a matter of course. The guy was very likable and sincere. He was so likable, parents began to invite him over, and he began buying nice presents for their children. Eventually, eyebrows were raised, and parents told the religious education director, and she went to the minister. Well, you can just imagine the fallout. No child was hurt, but families left the church. They didn't feel their minister had been looking out for their safety. And actually, he wasn't, though he thought he was doing the righteous thing. Unitarian Universalists believe in second chances. I definitely believe in second chances, and we want to support each other's spiritual growth, as stated in our principles. We do believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all. However, finding the righteous side of love can be complicated. The question is not always clearly defined. In fact, it is often difficult, as Burton Carley said. The things that go wrong don't come dressed as harmful, bad, or evil. They come dressed as good. We must consider the many complexities and especially be careful of feeling prideful of our goodness, which often blinds us to potential harm. Jesus offered sage advice to his disciples in Matthew 10:16. Be wise like serpents and innocent as doves. Being wise like serpents and innocent as doves is not easy for Unitarian Universalists or any person of conscience. Sometimes we have to learn to protect ourselves as individuals and as congregations. As Burton advises, humility comes from owning the shadow side of our virtues. And in the end, it is humility that allows our virtues to be virtuous. It is in our counterintuitive truth, but important to our spiritual maturity. Be cautious of our goodnesses. I try to be cautious of my desires to do what is right. I take calculated risk, knowing that I may be wrong. Not everyone is worthy of toleration, nor is merely tolerating someone's behavior the kindest thing to do. Salutary judgment and grace are infinitely kinder than any niceness or just putting up with bad behavior. The very things we may be most satisfied with can become the means to our falling out of right relationship. in our personal lives and within our congregations. Pride based in our conceived goodness and tolerance does go before a fall. Amen.
Be thou with us now and always, now and always. Blessed be.
May the love that gives to life its beauty, the reverence that gives to life its sacredness, and the spirit that gives to life its deep significance be strong within each of you and lead you into ever deepening relationship with the eternal mystery of life.